Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Invictus podcast with me, Gareth, otherwise known as Captain Stiff, and Sab. Good evening, Sab.
Good evening. It's good to be back again. Last week was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll have more of the same this evening with what we've got to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we say, guys, second episode, last one. Check it back on YouTube now, the Invictus Racing League YouTube channel, where we went back through the last season, the season 7 of the Invictus Racing League leagues, and some really decent conversation we had there. And this week, much different compared to last week. We're going to be going more towards the actual game rather than the league side. And I think for looking down through our agenda, we've got down written in front of us, Sab. It's one of those things where games have always got pros and cons. They've got their negatives, they've got their positives, and F1 2018 was definitely one of those ones, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's for me. I best described it. I might have hinted it last week. I can best describe it as a frustrating game. Really, it had the potential to be the best F1 game we've had so far from Codemasters, and in some aspects it was. They did deliver with some parts, but then other parts you're left scratching your head or trying to pull your hair out or whatever. Yeah, I don't know what you think about it, but for me, I think for me the best description of F1 2018 is frustrating. It could have been so much more if Codemasters had just put a bit more effort into it and put a bit of care into it.
Yeah, it seems like it's one of those games where, as you say, it was frustrating at times, and it did have a lot of potential. But it's definitely got a lot better. So I think it's definitely an upgrade on 2017. But then, yeah, like you say, we had so many game breaking bugs and glitches and issues, and I mean not so much on the offline mode, and the offline mode is fine, and we've seen career, especially this year, I think flourish compared to like 2017, and then of course I think before that career mode was quite non-existent. But yeah, I think the online mode really suffered, which I think is strange though, because obviously they were focusing, they had the esports becoming more of a big deal, and I think before this game came out, we were kind of all certain, oh, this is the one that they're going to really get online bang on.
Yeah,
And if anything, it felt like they took a step back.
yeah, I agree. We can get onto the career mode probably shortly, but for me, I bought F1 2018 specifically just for online. Really, I did love career mode before I started the online racing stuff like that. But for me, F1 2018 was all about getting stuck in, practicing, and learning the game online, racing with friends online, and we all seen how long it took Codemasters to get online properly up and running when it was first released. It was a buggy, frantic nightmare of a mess with lag and many other issues at the start of its life, which they just snowballing out of control straight away, aren't they? Really, and struggling to catch up with fixing the game once it starts life like that online, and to say, like you say, with the esports and stuff, it's going to bring more focus onto the game because F1 are heavily pushing the esports now. So like you say, it was a definite step back online because it's just like you've pointed out the different glitches and game breaking moments and stuff, and people we witnessed in Invictus losing races because there was stuck due to glitches or lag or anything else. Me personally had a race where um, I got accused of driving into somebody, but on my stream I was nowhere near them. But because I was near them, but because I did near enough to them, it bugged out and forced them off the track. But if you'd looked at my stream, nothing happened, and they just went off on their own accord. It's a shame because, like I say, they looked at this game as this online side of this game and thought this is where we're going to see a real improvement, and it really wasn't. I don't know what your experiences are. probably similar to mine. Your experience are with online this year, racing and spectating as well.
Yeah, I think we all have our fair share of instance when it comes to bugs, and I mean I had various crashes. I think I had one with in the first season we did on the game in when I was in the Renault in Australia, I believe, and it was and we'll get to them when we talk about the pros and the cons. But yeah, it was that bug where you can go from driving on full throttle to suddenly just stopping completely dead, and you become a dead weight. And yeah, I got caught out by
Yeah,
someone doing that. So it's weird though, because and hi to everyone joining the stream, and for those watching now or later, we will try and read out the comments so that you can hear what's going on. So yeah, guys, let us know what you're thinking, and then equally when we're talking, feel free to get engaged, and we'll read out your comments. But I don't know what you Sav and what everyone else listening is thinking, but I think like they had enough time to beta test it. It's not like they didn't have
yeah,
like the codes were given out, which I don't know. It's hard because obviously we're not developers, we're not privy to
no,
how it works out and how much they go into setting up. Because we've seen like it's not. I wouldn't say it's just F1 that's struggled with like online issues, because you look at like the biggest games ever. You had like I remember when GTA 5 got released on
oh
PS3 and,
yeah,
and Xbox, and I think for the first like week they had no idea how to run their servers
yeah,
because they had such demand. And I don't, obviously the demand isn't the same when it comes to Formula One, but I think they still had that opportunity with the beta to kind of really iron out a lot of the bugs that we saw very early on that took like not only took a long time to be patched out, because we saw a lot of patches on like very early on, and there's you can always expect a day one patch, and that's fine because that's pretty much standard with every game now, which is as sad as that is. Unfortunately, that's the reality, is that you're always gonna find bugs as soon as you release the game.
yeah,
But I think it's getting to that point where like there were so many things wrong, especially online, that just were either never fixed, never talked about. And you can talk about things like desync, and like desync is hard because obviously, and everyone says, oh, it's the Codemaster service, it's their service, but they don't run off a server system, so they run off P2P. So basically, your internet connection versus my internet connection, which
yeah,
is, and that's probably a lot of the problem, because you're counting on, especially when you're league racing, I guess, like you're counting on someone having equally fast internet to you,
yeah,
and even if they do and they're having like a bad connection night or something like that, it's one of those things where like P2P becomes so dangerous in racing, because you see things like desync happening all too much. And I mean, I don't know how to counteract it, but yeah, I'm sure you agree. Desync is probably one of those issues that it's so like it ruins races, doesn't it?
oh yeah, definitely. And Meg in the comments totally agrees and saying, does it excuse for the most ridiculous glitches? Peer-to-peer will always be desync and lagging. It's yeah, that is the biggest issue. I agree with you when it comes to this sort of stuff. It goes over my head a little bit. I'll be honest when it comes to all that side of the game. But it's clear to see that P2P is not really working for the game now, and surely they have to start looking, if they possibly can, at servers for the online racing, especially like you point out in league racing now. More and more people are now forming their own leagues because they've seen the esports and think it's really cool, and they and they want to go racing online. It's only going to put more pressure on the game to perform. And if you've got people on there who say have got quite a poor internet connection compared to somebody who's got a really good internet connection, like you say, it's going to just bring out more and more problems. And unfortunately, we could have very similar. I'm not going to write it off now, but we could have very similar with F1 2019 if these sort of issues aren't sorted out. You'd like to hope and pray that they do. Me personally, I don't see. I'm not a developer or anything like that, but when it comes to beta testing and stuff like that, I don't understand why they can't, for example, do an open beta instead of just
Yeah, yeah,
just uh, applying for a code through their forums. Why can't they just do it as an open beta like some games do, some big games do, and really test the strengths of the online, get as many people on it as possible through an open beta over a weekend, say a Friday to Monday, and say, right, lads or lasses, let's go for it. Let's get some online racing going. Let's see how we can get on with this game, see where the problems are, and you'd see then before the game comes out what it's like with a real mass amount of people on the game. And for me, I applied for codes. I didn't get one. I know a few people in Invictus got one, but a few people out of the whole of Invictus, that's not great, is it? You'd like to, all the people in Invictus would probably like to get their hands on that beta. Do you know what I mean? It's, it's frustrating because you'd like to think that they want to push it to its limits before it's released, so they know where to fix if need to fix. And
Yeah,
it's yeah,
I think it's one, and like you look at it as if with the beta, because obviously you use a beta for one of two things. You either, like you say, you want to push your system to its limits, or you want feedback, whether it be written, whether it be verbal, whether it be just like purely like analytical. But they don't. I don't think they get that sort of, because like you say, like the beta could be passed out to, I don't know how you do it, whether you give it to specific, not specific leagues or as such, but like if you look at certain areas, because the problem is, and like I am fully behind sim racing in all its capacities because I love motorsport, I love gaming, putting both together perfect. But I
yeah,
think now we're getting to a point where there is so many different leagues now that
yeah,
it's almost an oversaturation, and then you get a lot of people kind of I don't know about you, but I find a lot of the sort of F1 online community very toxic.
oh yes,
Yeah, very argumentative. But I think that kind of spoils it, because then that boils over onto the way that people play the game, the way that people test the game. Because I think
yeah,
you're, as opposed to looking for like a, I don't know, but it depends on. I guess it depends on what you want out of the game. Do you want it to be a simulation? Do you want it to be arcade? Because that's the problem that Formula One have had. So many like
yeah,
iterations of the game is. Do they want it to be an arcade casual game that you can just turn on and play, or do they want it to be more of a GT Sport, Project Cars 2, and iRacing R Factor? Like, do they want it to be a sim where you get really immersed into it and it actually feels like you're driving the car? And with such a large audience, I think it's hard to test a game when you're gonna have the. It's like it's hard to test a game when you can have such a spread of comments, because obviously everyone's on it for a different reason.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Yeah, it's a tough one. I certainly would not want to be in the shoes of Codemasters and the people sorting it out. You know, what I mean, it's tough. It really is. We could be sitting here all night discussing it and reading the comments of the people, and I think overall we're all quite united. You say there can be a toxic atmosphere, not between Invictus, but obviously on the main public servers. But I think the majority of people are united in the fact that they are pretty annoyed with how online is working, and hopefully Codemasters can get F1 2019 working correctly and we can get stuck into it quite quickly, because we do not want another uh, saga, another fiasco, or whatever you want to call it, again for the beginning of this new game, which is out soon. It's yeah, I wouldn't know what else to say upon what you said without repeating myself. Really, it's a tough one for Codemasters. I just hope for them, for their sake, especially, that they get it right, because if they don't get it right, surely F1 or whoever's going to look at them and say, look, you're not running the game properly, and you're hurting our brand by having these buggy online races. We're going to go to somebody else, which will definitely hurt Codemasters. I don't know what you think to that. It surely is coming up to a make or break situation for Codemasters now, because it's been going year after year after year with online, and it's getting to a point now where they're going to get to crossroads F1, especially with the esports, and they're going to say, look, this is the state of what Formula One's like online, we want you to sort it out. Can you sort it out? And if they can't, then they're going to have to go to somewhere else. And like we spoke about off air, you could then go into a big company like EA and or 2K, and that's when all the microtransactions come in, which is definitely what we don't want. So it's really a tough balance at the minute for Codemasters, for F1, and everyone involved in this game. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on with it.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I'd agree with pretty much all of that. It is tricky, and you can see obviously Codemasters they're not a massive development team, so you can understand that they may struggle with some things, but if fundamentally you have to make a game that works, and at so many points this year we saw issues that, and it's not that you'd ever wish ill on something like the esports, like on say it's live and it's being shown on Sky as I think it was Sky Sports would put it out, but you never got a glitch there, and you kind of occasionally just wished that, you know what, I kind of wish that one of them. I think that's why they do 25% races, because in a 50 they might have got caught in the pit lane or something like that, and
Yeah,
and you need something like that to really get the
yeah, I
developers like,
agree.
right, we need to fix this, because I mean the pit lane glitch was just ridiculous. The fact that that was still a
Yeah,
thing, or the fact that, I mean, we had I mean, we'll go into it later, but we had things like the floating tire barriers that became static on track, like tire warming glitches earlier in the game before that got patched out. And yeah, like we were saying about the beta, it's like it is hard because obviously glitches can happen. It can be just one person that gets one glitch, but something that was recurrent and ruins races, like the pit stop glitch, like
yeah,
I'm trying to think of other ones that happened that were quite like the stopping at full speed one. Like they are game breaking, and that
yeah,
really will put your audience off. And I think that's the problem now, is that you look on social media and people are so skeptical about what Codemasters can do for 2019. And I don't know, it's a shame, because obviously you really want a game to be good and you really want it to work well, but I think so many people are kind of just like have been knocked back so many times. They're like, oh yeah, no, it's gonna be the best ever. It's gonna be the best ever, and graphically, yeah, it looks much better. But like as an actual simulation or casual experience, it needs to work fundamentally. And
yes.
the fact that they haven't managed to really secure that year upon year has really kind of hit its base, I think, and it's really kind of causing its community and its fan base to struggle and say things like maybe they should look to take it to another developer.
Yeah. Just reading the comments, Meg was saying apparently Lando has said F1 2019 handling is as good as R Factor. So maybe more of a sim than an arcade. It's going to be interesting to see if Lando's saying that. It must be quite good indeed. Stephen also saying one of the other glitches was the safety car not coming out into the pit lane in F3. I remember watching that live, and it was ridiculous. That was. It said safety car was out, but it was sat at the end of the pit lane. It was like, what the hell's going off? Nobody could go quick, and when anybody did get quick, I'm sure there was quite a few penalties handed out during that as well, and it was an absolute nightmare. And yeah, it's stuff like that. And the thing is, not only does it harm Codemasters, but it can harm people like us in Invictus and other leagues, because it could put people off racing, and then they'll not want to race, and then the numbers dwindle in the leagues, which it just it then makes it more difficult for the likes of us who are still growing to try and attract people to come race. Yes, we have got other leagues now, GT Sport and Project Cars and stuff like that, but at the time when we was mainly F1, if people were seeing that there was seeing our race live on stream and it was people getting stuck in the pit lanes and stuff like that, people look at it and think, well, I don't want to sign up on that. I don't want to do that because I'm just going to end up in a glitch or a bug, and that then harms our chances then, and it also harms our leagues then from fellow people, because like myself or whoever, you could go into a race thinking you're doing really well, have your race completely ruined, and you just think to yourself, I just can't be bothered with this. I don't want to do this, and then that's where the numbers also dwindle then from your own core drivers within the league. So not only have they got to sort it out for themselves, but they've got to sort it out for the people like us as well to be able to keep attracting and doing races online as a community like we are, because otherwise it'll soon die out and people, well, not die out completely, but it'll soon dwindle, I should say, and people just think I can't be bothered with, and why you wouldn't blame them really, to be honest, because if these games you're paying 45, £50 for a game and it's not working online properly, you wouldn't go to Curry's, for example, and buy a TV and it not work properly. You take it back. So yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's got to be fixed for everybody, not just for Codemasters, because otherwise everybody's going to get affected by this.
Yeah, yeah, fully agree. I mean, it is tricky, and you can understand how they might struggle, and they have said that in the past that some bugs they know of but they can't fix, which I don't know. It seems like it's a bit of a galling thing to say because if you know that something's broken in the game, you think that you try and put everything into it. But I think once they've got to a certain stage of that game's life, they kind of look to the future. And I mean, I don't know. They've said that 2019 was a 2 year development sort of system. I don't know whether that's just for this game, whether it's been for previous games, but they have the lookout is looking relatively positive, and the streams that we've seen from Lee Mather and the guys over at Cody's is looking better. But like yeah, like you say, it is pretty depressing when you spend, and I think a lot of people put, and you can look at it on a like your enjoyment level, but equally I think a lot of people put sort of a lot of themselves into this because obviously if you've got a
Yeah,
passion in something and if it's sim
yeah,
racing, people can put hours and hours, especially
yeah,
like your guys at like top tier or like your F1s like our level, and then equally if you look at the top level AOR guys or like Inside Line and those sort of leagues, like they'll probably put hours into practicing, and
yeah,
then and we've seen there's been countless times that we've seen on Twitter someone say that they were leading a race or they were doing something and then they got caught out by something, and it's that will really harm someone's motivation perhaps like,
yep,
and it's I don't know, I don't think you can't take it personally, but I think at the time you kind of a lot of it you
yeah,
hear
you do.
anger, and
Mm,
anger is the last thing you want when you're playing a game because obviously it's
definitely.
designed to make you have fun. So
Yep.
it's a mixture. I think it's a lot of people need to take it possibly a little bit less seriously because then I think as soon as as long as you kind of take a step back from what you're doing and don't get too over engrossiated in it, because I think a lot of people kind of get way too into it. They get way too angry when things don't go their way, or perhaps they get caught in an accident with someone else, and then you get to a situation where you're having a slinging match with other people, and that's
Yeah.
I think that's a negative sort of impact that frustration has when you're so competitive,
Mhm.
because I think you get that in any sport. You'd have that in football if someone
Yeah.
you get a hard tackle with from someone, you give them a bit of lip, and then you maybe
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
in for them later in the game. So but it's the same thing, but I think obviously you have to you're playing a game and you're doing, and then equally I think you're doing it with so many other people. Say you've got a full like a lobby of 16. I think it just sounds a little bit silly just to be shouting down a microphone like essentially when you're sitting in a room at home. They're not really there,
Yeah.
but it's hard, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because you're
It is. Yeah.
frustrated at the game, you're frustrated at what's happened, and you feel slightly aggrieved and you feel wronged, but especially if it's a game glitch. But
Yeah.
there's, I guess it's one of those, it's sort of like a helpless thing, isn't it? Because there's nothing you can do.
No, you definitely can't. I agree. I've been there, and I've don't get me wrong. I've shouted at friends and stuff, which it's turned out it's not been their problem, and end up feeling bad about it, don't you? And you turn around after once you've calmed down and you apologise and everything. But yeah, games should not be making you angry, and the problem with this game is it's starting to make a lot of people angry, isn't it? And frustrated and wound up, and all the negative emotions that shouldn't be there in playing games. That's that's the key there. Playing games, like you say, playing games are there to be fun, to enjoy, to experience good moments and stuff. And when it's getting to the point where we're getting like what you've said, it's time. It needs to time to really get sorted. And yeah, I experienced last season with F1 2018. I'll hold my hands up. I got very frustrated and wound up for quite a few races I were in, but that wasn't due to anybody else's fault or people crashing into me or anything. It was just down to the fact that you just couldn't race properly because something would go wrong or something did go wrong or anything like that. And yeah, you don't want to be coming off a game and you're completely wound up and mad because then it ruins your rest of your evening or it ruins the rest of your week or whatever, or however you react to it. And you should be coming off there and just having a good race. And if you're first, fifth, or 13th, come off it knowing you've had a good race or knowing you've enjoyed the game at least glitch free and be able to race to your ability, which at the moment you're not able to do.
No, but then I think we still have to look, and I'd like the guys that are watching to drop comments in as well, and we'll read them out. But obviously, we don't want to be completely negative about it because on a base level, it's a good game. It was you get
Yeah,
burnout at the end of a game, regardless of whatever game you're playing. I think when you put as many hours into it as a lot of our community does, by the time that game comes to its end, the end of its life, people are going to have burnout. They're going to get frustrated more easily because you're kind of used to
yeah,
everything, and it becomes slightly predictable. So then when something doesn't kind of go the way
sorry.
that you think, that's all right. When something doesn't quite go the way you think it should do, like, or it's not normal to what the game is, I think you get a lot more frustrated. But I think, like, looking at, like, I've got a list of sort of pros down of things that I really liked about the game this season. Graphically, it was a massive upgrade from 2017. Um, but then I think if you map that over to what we're expecting for 2019, obviously they've updated their lighting model and their graphic model,
Yeah,
and so it doesn't look as much of an upgrade from 2017, but it was like it looked a lot cleaner, it looked a lot sharper, it worked a lot better. I loved the sort of introduction to the Liberty style or sort of presentation. I thought
yeah,
that was much nicer. The way they incorporated Crofty introducing the races and the theme tune that obviously that Brian Tyler made for Formula One. So I think the presentation side was really nice. Um, I thought the game is when you go onto it, it's not. I think the menu was a bit ugly. There wasn't much to it. Obviously, just a scroll bar with a picture there. I thought that could have been, and that looks like that's been ramped up for next year's game. So I think that's gonna look a lot nicer. But I think it was very clean. It kind of set out what it wanted to do and got it done. I think career mode this year was much better. Um, and I don't know about you or the guys watching, but I do tend to play quite a bit of career, especially early on in the game's life. And obviously you had a lot of the resource point building and kind of the way that you could race and get points. The only problem I had with it this season is that I felt two things. I felt you could get points, or at least you could level up your car way quicker than what is realistic. So
yeah,
you could get a Williams from being back row of the grid to sort of front row if you really put like sort of like all of your resource points into power upgrades. You could get it at the front of the grid by the end of the season, which is not, it doesn't work like
no,
that. Um,
no,
so I think the balancing issues kind of it was a good idea, but I think they still kind of missed out on the balancing of sort of timing of upgrades. Because I think when you look at real Formula One, you get things like they only really do sort of upgrades every 4 or 5 races. It's not like, oh yeah, we've got this, we've got this, we've got this, we've got this. Like they might bring in like a very small upgrade, but I think on the
yeah,
game you could fundamentally change like a very strong component of your car like every other race, which I think was yeah, I think that was slightly unbalanced. What else I've got online? I think yeah, we've said that it was very buggy, but I think I was glad they brought back the things like levels because at least then that makes you want to that makes you want to play online because you do level up. Although it doesn't really lead anywhere or do anything, at least it kind of. I think F1 2017 didn't have anything like that at all. There was no stats. There was no reason for you unless you were league racing to play online because unless you just wanted to race against someone else, there was nothing like you weren't getting anything. You weren't seeing you weren't seeing like your stats. You weren't seeing if how many like fastest laps, pole positions, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was better. Gameplay this year I thought was a massive upgrade compared to last year. I felt the steering felt much nicer. Tire deg felt much more obvious when your tires started to go off. You started to lose rear end
Yeah,
grip
definitely.
and tire overheating as well, which I think caught a lot of people out, especially in league racing very early on, because you had people trying to just do setups that wouldn't work and were just burning their tires. And I think I remember like booting up the game for the first time and driving around Spa, and I crashed on Eau Rouge and Radion every single lap for about 10 laps. I ended up just rage quit out of it, and it was because I was just driving as if I would on F1 2017. But I
Yeah.
think yeah, so I think that felt much nicer. I don't know what your pros are, but I think yeah, that was something I really enjoyed about this year's iteration.
You've pretty much said similar to me, really. I'll be honest, I never really used spectator mode online before commentating with you this season, and I found from what I've read and been told by people that the spectator mode is much more improved this year compared to 2017, and it does feel like, especially with the camera angles and what have you, it does feel like yeah, at times you are actually watching a real F1 race where they've done it, and it's quite easy to navigate through each different driver and see how they're doing and go through the different camera angles. So I really enjoyed that. The gameplay, the graphics, yeah, good. Me personally, the career mode I enjoyed briefly at first, but I'll be honest, I kind of got a little bored of it towards the end of the first season. It's simply because of what you picked up on, how easy it was to pick up your points on the skill tree and stuff. And I was obviously McLaren, as you might be shocked to hear, but I got a struggling McLaren up fighting with Ferrari by what was it, Mexico, and it shouldn't be like that. Do you know what I mean? I can't remember how many seasons you could do on career mode, but you don't want to get to the second or third season and you get to a point where you're lapping the whole bloody field. You know what I mean? That can be tweaked. It's no problems there. The career mode in general with the interviews and stuff like it made it give it more atmosphere. I thought. But yes, very similar to what you say with F1 2018. It was definitely a step up from F1 2017. It's just for me the biggest negativity is what we've just been discussing, and if they can nail that with the improvements what they've got coming for 2019 and what we'll probably talk about later with F1 2019, I think they'll have a very very good game on the hands. It's just they've got to get it all together in one nice little package.
Yeah, big time. And yeah, fully agree. Those well, they were our positives and negatives about about the game. So we'll move on to the new gleaming brand new game that's coming out very shortly. So um, F1 2019 looking from what we've seen so far to be I think visually spectacular. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and I think playing that, if you were playing that on a PS4 Pro or a Xbox One X on a 4K TV, it might
Yeah.
be like I that would be unreal. I think it just looks stunning. So I think they've done an absolutely magnificent job with their lighting model and their graphic model this season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that, and I think it's whether it, it's like it's the same as we were saying earlier. That sort of sim versus casual, because you're going to get the guys that pick it up, and or like parents that buy it for their kids, and they like racing, but they're not really into Formula One, but they'll race around the track because, oh, I've heard of Formula One, I'll buy that game. You don't want something that's going to be quite like R Factor or iRacing, where they get in there and they can't get any traction because you have to play around with the setup so much, or you have to.
Yeah,
But then equally, I think looking at it, and I think I was watching one of the streams, and they said that the grip level on the curbs has been decreased by 400%. So
damn.
yeah, I think riding the curbs next, or like in a week or a week and a half's time or so, it's gonna be a completely different game. And I think that's it.
Oh
Kind
yeah,
of it's kind of interesting because obviously it almost levels the playing field for a little bit, doesn't it? Because
yeah,
you all come in, and regardless, you could be a top tier F1 driver, you could be a lower half F3 driver, but I think for the first sort of like 2 hours, everyone's going to be tiptoeing around these tracks trying to work out if they've changed the handling model, if they've changed the way certain things happen on the car, if the tire deg or the tire temperatures work slightly different. So I think that makes it a little bit more exciting coming into a new game.
definitely. I just hope they don't get pressured into changing it quite early on in a patch because people are moaning that they can't handle it. Because if I remember this game, did they not add something with the tires because people were moaning about how too simulated the tires was, and they added something so you didn't have to manage your tires so much. So I hope they don't buckle under pressure because people might moan that it's a bit too difficult on the curbs or whatever. But yeah, like you say, it's going to be a unique challenge, and it's going to put everybody on a level playing field. Me personally, and I think a lot of people as well, I'm hugely excited for the F2 part of the
Yeah,
game.
big
I've
time.
seen a video. Yeah, I've seen a video on YouTube. Someone put up. I don't know who put it up, but it was like the introduction to F2 and it was the actual gameplay of the F2, and it's showing you race against your team. You have to pick obviously your team. I think you pick Carlin, and you pick Carlin, but then you also have to pick your academy. You're going to be with McLaren, Ferrari. So McLaren is only McLaren. Ferrari, you've got more choices of teams to join through F1 and so on and so forth. And he went with, I think it was Mercedes he went with. And you have to race your teammate. Uh, it's like a tester. It's during the championship, but it's like to test to see what type of driver you are and stuff. It looked quite interesting, and it sounded just like F2 does, even though, yeah, F2 before they went to these engines sounded much better, but it just sounded and looked really, really like F2. The graphics and everything looked really good, and then there's a little cutscene after it. It looked really good, and I loved the idea of starting, so to speak, at the bottom and trying to work your way up through the rookie league and trying to build your reputation up and try and make a name for yourself to the point to get a seat in F1. That to me sounds and looks really exciting. I cannot personally wait for the F2 part. So for me, I am really excited for career mode next season, more than I have done for a few years now, because it's that added factor of F2 bringing into it now.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I love F2. I've watched it for years
Yeah,
and
me
years.
too.
I think F2 on the whole is a lot more exciting than F1.
Yes,
I think it's
definitely.
it's closer. It's more fun to watch. Um, Obviously the strategy I think comes into a lot more because their tires are obviously smaller and they don't last as long. And then you get some incredible races, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's a really good move then putting F2 in the game. I think it's probably been a long time coming. I think they probably could have done it. Obviously it's probably Liberty that have kind of helped them out with this, but adding this into the game maybe 2 years ago would have helped the sales, because I think people like different sort of options, and we saw that when the classic cars first got put in. People wanted to play with different classic cars, and I think what's disappointing with the last game, and I think probably of this game coming up as well, is they don't have classic tracks, and Their reasoning
Yeah.
for that is that it's they if they were going to do a classic track, it's a lot of work because they can't digitally scan it. But I don't know. I think even if you're just slightly altering, like, because I don't know. It's like I'd like to see them have things. If you're going to have the classic cars from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, I'd like them to. You can at least keep the main parts of a lot of tracks. So you can still have Monza and Silverstone, but you can have the old Monza and the old Silverstone layout. So I
Yeah.
think, but you don't have to go back to having. I think it was F1 2013 had Jerez and Brands Hatch, and I mean I'd love that. Brands Hatch was my local
Brands
track.
that should be good.
Yeah, like I could drive around that for hours and hours and hours. Um, but yeah, it would be nice to have that. I can understand they say it's a lot of work going into designing a whole track, but yeah, I think when you've got classic cars, I think people hope to drive around classic tracks with
Yeah.
them, or at least have the ability to, I don't know, like work on it when the game is out and add it as DLC or something like that,
Yeah.
where it's something for us to look forward to. But like with the F2, as you're saying, that I mean, it's the lineup is going to be the 2018 season. So
Yes.
you've got Lando, Alex, George, all that like in there. So I think that's going to be really exciting. And
Yeah.
obviously they're
Definitely.
bringing out a free patch that will update it to the 2019 season. So that's good. I think that's
Yeah.
a good thing for them to do PR wise for the community, because obviously it keeps it updated, keeps it fresh. But yeah, I think F2 is definitely the thing I'm most looking forward to. I'm looking forward to driving. I think they sound really nice as well. I think they look really
Yeah.
nice. So yeah, that'll be fun. So I'm looking forward to doing some when it comes out. I'll probably either stream it or organize some 25% races or something like that with some of the Invictus guys and see if we
That'd be
can have
good.
some fun on there. More focus on the online aspect, I think, as well, is another big one that they're having a look at this year. Obviously, they've got the league section where you can organise your league, and you put your drivers in there, and if you need to send them a message, you can send it all out to them. They'll get it whenever they sign on to the game. I think that's really clever.
Yeah.
They're starting to embrace sort of the fact that the majority and the core of their audience, sort of, at least the diehards, will all mostly be playing online leagues, not
Yeah.
online casual lobbies, because I think people look. It's been an issue with F1 games for a long time that casual lobbies are just the worst place to go if you want to get an online racing experience.
Oh yes.
And I don't know what everyone else thinks, but I think it's one of those things. It's like I cannot stand doing online lobbies because you get a mixture of people that just want to go on there and cause chaos. And there's no consistency with anything. Like they brought out last game, they brought out the race. It was the two. It was like the safety rating and the level, and you were meant to get grouped into someone that was
Yeah.
like a sort of a comparable level, but it didn't work because that only works if one of all it only worked on rank mode. It didn't work on unranked mode. But then if one person crashes and they know that their rating was going to get negatively impacted, they they then just kind of just go on a tear. So you just have one person just causing chaos, and it just ruins the
Yeah.
experience for everyone. So I think
Yeah.
they've got to sort of with 2019, they've got to focus on that again. They've got to look at sort of keeping penalties consistent, or keep in a way looking at the more. I think GT Sport. I haven't really had a major look at GT Sport because I'm more of a Project Cars guy, but I think GT Sport's penalty system and their sort of safety rating looks a lot better than what F1 has done. So I think F1 can definitely learn from what other sort of racing games are doing. Because yeah, I don't know about you, but I think online racing is good, and the fact that they're focusing on leagues is much better this
Yes.
year compared to last year. But equally, still, I think you've still got to work, and you've still got to kind of keep the guys that are doing casual lobbies sort of interested, and not making it so you
Yeah.
go on there and it's just a crash fest.
Yeah. I agree. I probably everybody's probably seen that gif of Bart Simpson walking into that room and Grandpa sat there and Bart walked straight back out. That was pretty much me in an online lobby, like casual lobby this season on F1 2018. I went to a race and I can't remember, well, I'm middle of the pack somewhere, and we were at Silverstone, first corner, and probably 90% of the field went off at the first corner because some idiot at the back decided he's not going to brake, he's just going to fly into it. And it just gets to a point where you're trying to get out of the gravel and people are just ramming you and doing all sorts of stupid things. You're thinking, why? Why? What's the point? What is the enjoyment here? And you just click the quit button, and I honestly never really went back to online casual racing. And like you say, it's great that they're adding the league side to it. It shows that, like you say, they're noticing the main fans of the game are doing league racing, but you've got to balance it out, haven't you? So everybody can enjoy online racing, not just your devoted and hours type of racer. You want people to be able to come onto the game at any point they want to, just for a quick race and enjoy it, and then come back off if they want to after. And it's that fine balance, isn't it, of making sure that everybody can enjoy online.
Yeah, big time. But I think they are definitely working towards that, and I think I have the faith. If several people may not, I'm really looking forward to the new game. I think it's going to be hopefully very refreshing. It's going to be a much needed upgrade on the 2018 experience. But it's things that I think they're kind of building sort of foundations for hopefully increasing what they're offering this year. So like the customization. I think that's the fact that it's taken this long to get into the game is unbelievable. like
Yeah, I agree.
I purely put that down to Liberty. I think Liberty have probably helped out of this massively. I think when it was the old management, it was probably almost a straight no go. So you'd say it's most likely at the sort of the help of Liberty, and but even down to the basics of being able to customize your own helmet. And I mean, the
Yeah,
helmet designs have been the same for about three
yeah,
games. The fact that you can only change three colors on the helmet, you can't
yeah,
change the design. They still don't have a helmet designer for this game, which I think is disappointing. I'd like to be able to design your own helmet with words and decals. But the fact that you can do things like suits, gloves, boots, helmets now, at least you can have somewhat customizable. I know they're all presets, but at least you can change a lot about it, and I think that does keep a lot of it fresh as well because
yeah.
it does allow you to be a little bit more creative. So I think that's something I'm looking forward to because it'll be interesting to see how that gets mapped over to especially something like league racing and online racing because I think it allows you to almost build not a personality, but it sort of builds your own character, if that makes sense. Because you're not,
Yeah,
oh, here's generic driver number one versus generic driver number two. You'll be able to work people out or recognize drivers by their race suit, by their gloves, by their helmets a lot better. And I think that will make especially league racing a lot more sort of enjoyable to watch because you'll be able to see how everyone's doing. You'll be able to recognise drivers for drivers if they're in the
yeah.
same car. So yeah, I think that's something that's definitely well needed and will be well received.
Definitely, and just touching on what you were saying about the helmets, it is a shame that there isn't a full on helmet designing capabilities because you've seen how creative people can get when it comes to sports games and stuff where they can design things on there. People design like old, like for example, old football kits or whatever, for example, and you could just imagine if the creative people out there could get their hands on a proper helmet designing interface that you could end up with some of the really old classic helmet designs like a Mika Hakkinen or a James Hunt or you know what I mean it could be well utilized and could just give you that more bit more personality and more individuality online. But hopefully for the next game after they bring that in because yeah, the helmet designing on this game is just it just bores me now. I just pick three random colours on a random preset and never really touch it again after, and it's a shame really because there's so much potential in there. It is great that they are bringing in the customization now, finally, but you just need to go that next step further and just allow people to be unleashed and be as free as possible and design what they can within reason without obviously being vulgar or anything like that. But you know, it's yeah, it's good. It should be very interesting to see online this year with more customized cars and drivers and such. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what we'll be able to do. I honestly haven't looked too much into it myself, so I'm looking really forward to seeing what we'll be able to do when the game comes out.
Yeah, I've done the same. I've tried to not watch too much gameplay or too much of what
Same.
purely to make it a little bit sort of something to look forward to. So yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I see the comments going down. Like Scott's in here, SJD's in, so evening boys, and yeah, I don't know what you lot think. I think the game. I'm looking forward to it. Like Scott's saying as well that he can't wait for league racing, and that's good. And I think that's hopefully that's how everyone's feeling because you want people to be wanting to come back. And I think the 2019, what we've seen so far from Cody's, is making people enthusiastic. It's making them want to come play the game because it looks better. It's got new features. They've done what they need to do for the new game to kind of build people's hype around it. They haven't just released a trailer which is just this looks the same as last year. Like the graphical upgrade this year
Yeah,
has made people okay, the graphics look way better, the lighting looks way better. They've got all these new features, so I think they've kind of they've hyped the game visually. Now it's just it's got to stand up gameplay and online wise. So I think this is the first. You almost have to kind of take the first, I'd say, 2 weeks sort of to let them kind of iron out any patches that or any bugs sort of like that they might find because yeah, like we said earlier, day one patches are always you'll always get them in games now. But I think
yeah, you know.
after those 2 weeks to like a month, then you should sort of see hopefully a really decent game.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
So moving away from the games and into real life on track Formula One, we'll quickly go and have a brief look forward to the French Grand Prix this weekend. But I will just check in with you because we didn't get to talk about it last week, and the comments were raging about it, but we didn't actually get a chance to talk about it. So we won't delve into it because I'm sure that it will only kick off more arguments. But Vettel Hamilton, was it a penalty?
No.
Oh, I think it was.
Wow. Well, that see, we could be here all night now. Um, I see Ferrari have want to now review the situation because they initially took away the appeal, but now they've reappealed or something. I honestly they've done something out of it. But me personally, I don't think it was a penalty. Um, you could argue what Lewis did to Daniel Ricciardo in Monaco, with 2016, 2017, whenever it was. That was very similar in some aspects. That Lewis slightly went over to the right and forced Daniel Ricciardo to let off the throttle, otherwise he was going into the wall. And Lewis didn't get a penalty for that. Now, I'm not targeting Lewis before anyone thinks that. I'm not going to do that because I value my life. Um,
I think
but
the problem with that there because a lot of people have used that comparison is that um, Danny he had a lot more room. Although Lewis kind of lost the back end because he was on the wet and he was trying to get back onto the dry line, is that there was a lot more of a gap between Lewis's rear tire and Daniel's front tire and then the barrier. Whereas this time Seb really pinned Lewis up against the wall, and I'd say like 6 inches to the right, and he would have put him into it. And it's good. Like SJD's kind of perfectly summed up my thoughts on it. Like he said, it was a penalty according to the rules. I don't think. I think the question is whether the rule is fit for purpose, which is, and that's a good point because you have to look at it like you have to. People were always. I think what a lot of people's minds were made up over the frustration of it's another win for Mercedes, not whether it was like because if that was anyone else, would they have said the same, or are they just saying, oh no, it's definitely not a penalty because it's Lewis and Seb? Like if we'd seen Lance Stroll go off and pin, I don't know, Danny Kvyat up against the wall, people would have gone, course, Stroll's really like forced him up against the wall there, and people would be saying, oh, that's probably a penalty. I think it is a penalty. I think it's just a harsh one. I think it does take away from the excitement of the race because obviously then the rest of the race you just know that Lewis had to stay within 5 seconds of him.
Yeah,
But I think fundamentally he's gone off track. He's lost time. Lewis has stayed on track, therefore has the advantage and should be. I don't know. I think he probably could have either let Lewis through and then try and get back at him later on the lap because the Ferrari had better straight line speed. So in theory, he could have got ahead of him and tried to pass him on the DRS straight. But I think it's I don't I'm not I haven't signed up to the people that say, oh, he was steering to the right, he was trying to block him off. I genuinely do believe that he lost control of the tyres. He spun the
yeah.
rears on the grass trying to get back onto track, and he lost the rear end. That's fine, but you still what level do you get to? Do you if he had put Lewis into the wall, is that not a penalty because it's just hard racing, or is that now a penalty because he's caused another driver to crash? Where do you cross the line with sort of causing a collision and not causing a collision? Because obviously Lewis had to slam on the brakes, and we saw the telemetry that obviously he had to put full brake on because he saw Seb coming directly towards him. So I think it is a hard one, and I can understand why people be so frustrated about it. But yeah, it's a harsh rule. But the problem is that people wanted consistency from the stewards,
Yeah.
and it's hard to do that because every incident is different. So I don't know what you're taking it. I think it was a harsh penalty, but I think it was warranted. But then I'm sure people will disagree with me.
It's one of those, isn't it, that I don't think anybody's ever going to unanimously agree upon. For me, for me, Lewis has seen Seb go off. Now there was more room to the left for me. If Lewis had gone left rather than right, where if I'm not see I'm no expert like Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, but that right hand side for me it was always a door closing. It was never ever going to be a wide open door because Vettel was always going to go straight across that grass. He was never going to stick and then suddenly turn left when he's come off the grass. He was always going to go straight towards that wall until he corrected it and then got the car going in the racing line. Whereas for me, Lewis was a couple of seconds behind at the time. If surely he could have read the situation and gone to the left of Vettel, let Seb go across him and go down the left-hand side, and then suddenly he's got a clear track to overtake Seb or be within touching distance for the next DRS zone. That's, for me, Lewis. I'm not blaming Lewis here because, again, I value my life, but for me, Lewis kind of instigated, for me, in my opinion, instigated the penalty by going down the right-hand side, knowing that door would be closed, that if it was a case of Vettel pushing him up against the wall, he knew Vettel would probably get penalised for it, and so he did. It's tough to say, but for me, I thought Lewis at the time probably would have gone down his left hand side and took him that way because there was no way that overtake down the right hand side was ever going to happen because Seb just couldn't get the car under control quickly enough.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can understand that point of view. The problem is though, is as soon as he sees Seb going off, I imagine by the time he's even got to turn 5, I think it is, he's made up his mind. He sees Seb going off. I'm gonna stick it. I'm going to go for that line. He would have seen. He wouldn't know if Seb's going to kind of slow down or not. So I think he would have already have made his mind up about the fact he's going on the right hand side. Because if he goes to the left, he's off the racing line. He's picking up marbles on his tyres, and we've seen in the past people try and overtake around there, and they just lose all grip. So I think I don't know. He's the one that's on the track at the time. So to say that he shouldn't have gone for the right hand side of the track is like, well, you can't really blame the driver who's managed to stay on the track. And then equally this is, and I don't want to I don't like criticizing drivers really, because they can do things I can't to
Yeah,
and it's things
yeah,
like, but then equally it's just, I think it's another mistake for Seb, and I think he's becoming, and I don't think it's even it I think it's almost a subconscious thing now that he's just not. I don't think he's buckling under pressure. And I really didn't appreciate people that were saying, oh, maybe it's time for Seb to retire.
I
But
disagree with that. Yeah,
I think he just has a problem with. I think it's Lewis that he has the problem with. If that was anyone else, I don't think he'd make the mistakes. But I think he's got this thing now that because Lewis has been so dominant recently that he's so desperate to win this championship with Ferrari that he's just
yeah,
making silly errors. But I mean, I'm watching some of the comments coming in. They're actually really like, guys, you've got some really decent points here, and I do agree with a lot of people. They were saying that SJD saying that Ricardo did worse defending against Bottas when he was weaving down the back straight, and yep,
yeah,
fully agree with that. Very silly move from
yeah. I
Daniel
agree
going
with
down the
that.
back straight. I'm surprised he wasn't sacked with a penalty for that. And then Meg says that if they're going to make calls like they did, they need to fully explain, like they did, or point out on video with video footage, or at least a little bit more than the statement that they bring out. And yeah, I agree with that. And I think you see transparency is worked much better in sort of other sports. I don't think it has to be. I think sort of motor racing could probably learn from places like the NBA or the NFL where you get quite direct feedback from the officials about what the penalty is, and then equally afterwards why. So yeah, I think they definitely could have dealt with it differently, but I think coming into this week into France, it'll be interesting to see how sort of the vibe in the paddock is, because obviously it's an issue that's kind of still bubbling just under the surface, and I think it's one of those things
Yeah.
that I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think anything's going to change, even from whatever Ferrari's doing now. Nothing's going to change the result. I think that is it. I don't know if Ferrari are just trying to get more of a clarification of exactly why that was deemed a penalty and given a 5 seconds. There could be a bit of tension in the air for France this week, especially because if I remember rightly, did not Lewis not win here last year? Um, Ahead of Verstappen, I think it was. Was it the beginning where Seb clipped Bottas
Oh,
the
he did.
first
Yeah,
corner
I'm not quite
last
sure
year?
he clipped him. I think he he drove into the side of him pretty hard.
That was more like, yeah, I was probably being a bit too kind for to Seb there, but I just think as well, going back to what you were saying about Seb, I think it's a combination of the car is clearly not as good this year, and yeah, they might have a good engine, so they keep spout on about. Mercedes keeps saying they've got all these power modes and stuff, but you can clearly see the car is not as good as what it was. So there's extra pressure from Seb there, especially when he was leading a race. This potentially win his first win of the season, first win for. Oh, I can't remember the last win he had. It's been a while, and uh,
I'm
it's
sure. I'm sure
all
the
that
guys.
pressure.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll tell.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
sure the
pretty.
guys could
Was
say,
it
but it's been a
Spa
while.
last year? I want to say it was Spa last year, but
It could be, yeah. And all those things have just combined, and that's probably contributed to why he's making mistakes. And this this French going on to French Grand Prix, it's an interesting track because even though it's shed loads of runoffs and everywhere else, from what I remember last year, there was quite a few. bangs and knocks and people going off and there's a few instances down, was it turn 3 and 4 last season? I'm sure Grosjean crashed nearly every race
Yeah,
last season,
it
but I'm
was.
sure,
Yeah, it was. All the French drivers took each other out. I think it was Grosjean
yeah,
and
that's
Gasly
right, yeah.
took each other out.
Uh, so if it's as exciting as what it was last year, the French Grand Prix, we should be in for another good race this year. The only thing is, it's all those bloody coloured lines. Jesus Christ, it's like. Really, all the blues and reds. Jesus, I just think it's a bit excessive, but I can understand why because I remember Sky explaining it how they've got the different, it's the way to slow the cars down, isn't it? The different,
Yeah, well, originally it was Pirelli's test track, not Pirelli,
yeah,
Michelin's test track. It was. I think it was. It's actually quite an interesting circuit because it's incredibly old, so it's been around for ages. Obviously, it's only recently been reused for Formula One, but obviously they raced in it in the 80s, I want to say. Um, but it was actually you remember the idea that Bernie had a few years ago where he wanted to artificially make the tracks wet. So he wanted to
yes,
have like a sprinkler system for the. So they've actually got that at Paul Ricard. So they've got like an artificial sprinkler system that can wet the track as and when they want it. Because obviously it's a tire testing facility. So I think that's quite interesting because I'd like to like one race just like they accidentally have some sort of like mechanical or some sort of technical issue and just say oh, like suddenly sector 3 is like under a tidal wave of water or something like that. I think that was just that would always make things a little bit more interesting. But yeah, it's one of those tracks where I don't know. I grew up watching Formula One in the 90s and the 2000s. So Manicourt was always the track that I remembered watching. But I mean, people always say, oh yeah, I wish they went back to Manicourt. I was never a fan of that track really either. I think both tracks are kind of aren't too interesting. I think Paul Ricard has got its positives. It's quick. It's a power circuit. It's quite fun. But I don't know. It's gonna be an interesting race. I think I still expect the Mercedes to do
yes,
well. But then because it's a power track, I think the Ferraris should do well. And I I really really hope that Ferrari can sort of. See, I'm not one of these people that desperately hope that Mercedes kind of have bad races because really, if Mercedes got the best car, yes, they might have the most amount of money and resources, but they've made the best car. If they win every race, then they win every race, and that's on Ferrari for mismanaging a lot of situations during this season. Because I think the way that Ferrari have strategized so far this season has been
yes,
abysmal. And
yes,
like to the points where at some points it's been embarrassing. I mean, the way that and I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think a lot of people kind of
no,
were peddling
definitely
into
not.
conspiracy, but the way that they've worked with Charles Leclerc this season just is like it's so hard to explain a lot of the decisions they've made when it's come to so like
Mhm.
even if you go to Canada and they said oh Charles we're going on to Plan B and Plan B was to what because he was within 4 seconds of the leaders he was in four
Yep,
seconds of Lewis at that point and
yep,
Plan B was to keep him out for another 10 laps so that when he came out he was 12 seconds behind the leaders like
yep.
what's the like I don't get it. I don't understand, and I'm not the one that's being paid by Ferrari to make all these decisions. Maybe there's
No.
someone that knows a lot more about strategy than I do, and they probably do. But it just seems that we've seen over a lot over the last few races that the Ferrari team just seem to be imploding when it comes to race strategy.
Yeah, and the biggest highlight was probably with Charlie's Monaco incident. They thinking they're all comfortable, and then everybody goes out and starts going quicker and quicker. And Seb managed to hit the wall, come back in, and go back out again with a fresh set of tyres, and managed to get through comfortably. And they just left Charles sat there, and he went out in Q1, which is just insane. It's you just can't work out what they was thinking at that point. Why leave him in the pit lane? They could have just said to him, "See, I I watch McLaren's Team Stream. It's called Team Stream. It gives you all their radio feeds and it doesn't give you everything, but it tells you like the basics of what they're discussing and what have you. And I'm not saying McLaren are way better than Ferrari or anything, but what McLaren did during that Grand Prix was we'll go out. If we think we're going to be comfortable, we'll abort the lap and come back in. Now, I could not understand why Charles could not, did not have done that with Charles there. They could have easily sent him out and said, look, your time you set originally is good enough, come back in, save the tyres. Or the time is not good enough, stay out, finish this lap, and we should go through. It's, like you say, the strategies and the calls have just been absolutely shocking this season. Yeah, they had some bad luck. Bahrain, they were absolutely flying in Bahrain, and that was really bad luck that the was it? I can't remember what went on it. Was it a turbo that went on it?
Yeah,
Something.
I think was it yeah
That was bad.
some yes
That was bad
MGE I think.
luck because he was absolutely flying all weekend. It looked destined to win his first race with Ferrari, and Ferrari did look good that weekend. So they have had some bad luck, but more likely it's been bad calls from them, and you just, I just hope they can have a. It's been a while since a McLaren fan has cheered for a Ferrari, but I just hope they can just have a weekend of no problems, getting the calls bang on, and just to see what they can actually do. Yeah, that car probably isn't as good as that Mercedes, but just to see how much further up the field they can be with everything just no issues, just perfect. And fingers crossed they can do that with the French Grand Prix this weekend. I hope. I'm not one of these like you've just said. Mercedes have got it absolutely bang on this season. Fair play to them. It's up to the rest of the teams, if possible, to try and catch them up. But I just hope Ferrari can just get everything right this weekend, just to see if they can get that bit closer or even beat Mercedes this weekend. Because if they can, it not only stops this Mercedes dominance, which I don't think anybody really wants, unless you're a Mercedes or Lewis fan, but it also gives us better racing, and that's what this season, up front at least, this season's been lacking. Midfield-wise, there's been some great racing, but up front, we've just lacked some good racing, and I hope this weekend we can get it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Formula One does need it for its viewership. It needs someone to at least try and keep tabs of Lewis. And although I wouldn't bemoan him winning another championship at all. I wouldn't. I have no issue of him matching Michael either if he wants to go and win another one, because I think the problem is with Lewis is that people don't like his personality, or at least not that they don't like his personality, but I think they see him as sort of not very genuine a lot of the time. He's very sort of goes to every track and tells them how, like that they're the best, is the best track and the best fans, which and it's very sort of American of him to kind of that sort of like the way that he greets everyone, and that's but I haven't got a problem with that. He can do it all he wants because he backs it up by being our generation, or at least our generation, this generation, the best driver that drives a Formula One car on the face of the earth.
Yeah,
I think that he's leagues better than Seb, um, and I think Seb is very very good. I think Seb's probably in the top 10, but I think Lewis is another level. Um, and you can people can say, oh, he's been in the Mercedes, he's had a fast car, but I mean you've still got to do the goods. You've still got to win the races, and he has done that, whether it be via nefarious means we've seen in the past with Bottas and things like that. But I don't know. I think he gets a lot of stick, but I think in 60, 70 years time, people will look back on him in the same way that they look back on Senna, and they'll look back on Prost, and because they would have went, wow, look at what Lewis Hamilton did. So I think yeah, I think if he wins this weekend, I think people will kick off again and say, oh, championship's over, blah blah blah, F1's so boring. But then it's very easy to kind of say, oh look, you've got one team dominating. But I mean, I hated F1 in the early 2000s with Ferrari winning all the time. I hated it. But people will say, oh, remember, like F1 used to be so much better. Like, no, F1 didn't used to be better. That you always get a dominant team. If you look back through a lot of history, it's there's always
Yeah,
been. I mean, people always go, oh, like the racing was so much closer in the 90s. Like Senna used to win races and Prost used to win races by lapping the entire field. Like it doesn't make that doesn't make the race any better. That makes the driver, like you're enjoying watching a driver, and I think
yeah,
that's something that Lewis lacks. Is I think he sort of like lacks that. People don't enjoy watching him drive because, and whether that's because the cars are very somewhat, for a Formula One driver, easier to drive, as they're not the animals they used to be. They don't make the same, they don't scream like the V8s and the V10s used to. So I think that sort of like you've got a lot of guys sort of probably in their 20s older, like probably 20s to 40s, that have like this sort of like rose tinted like glasses about what the past of Formula One used to be, and then bemoan people like Lewis Hamilton with his glitzy LA lifestyle now, and but I don't think the racing's any worse for it, and I think I don't know. It's F1. I think it's at a crossroads because you've got situations where people get frustrated, but then equally, I think the drivers are probably pound for pound better than they've ever been.
yeah. They've had to be, haven't they? Really, they keep getting told they've got to trim down and be as light as possible, and luckily they've been allowed to at least put a little bit more weight on because some of them got a bit too thin for their own goods last year. But yeah, the fitness and everything else that goes into drivers nowadays just shows how dedicated they are. You only got to look back at look like James Hunt, for example, turning up with a hangover with a cigarette in his mouth. You know what I mean? Those days are long, long, long gone from where we are now. See, they are the supreme athletes now, and it'd be nice as these supreme athletes, if they, for me, if they could just be challenged more within the car and make it harder for them to drive, because they are these well-tuned athletes now. They don't look like they've been in the race car for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours when they get out of the car. So it'd be nice to see them. To be worked for the win, to just not literally just cruise around like at two. I know, listen to me moaning about how F1 is and how the drivers are. Who's me to talk? I won't be able to get in a car and drive it. But you know what I mean? They look like they have no issues at all driving one of these cars. It'd be nice if they could. If they could just be tested and challenged more and get out of the car and feel like they've really earned to win rather than it's been a bit of a cruise, especially for the Mercedes this season.
Yeah, and I think like I think we spoke about this before. I don't think you watch it as much, but IndyCar is kind of it's been on Sky this season,
Yeah,
and a lot of people kind of been watching it, and they have you can see their drivers wrestling the wheel around a lot
yeah,
of the tracks, and I no, I think it's very easy for people to say, oh, IndyCar is just oval racing, and I only race on about 4 ovals a season now because a lot of it's sort of either street track or circuit based racing, and it's actually. I think IndyCar is definitely got a lot of things right. It's the car is a lot more receptive to what the driver's doing. It kind of you have to fight it a lot more. Their tire management is very impressive, and equally they still have refueling. And I mean, I'm for and against refueling in Formula One. I can understand the benefits of it, but then a lot of people say, "Oh, bring back refueling." But the problem with when we had refueling is it just makes it makes the race kind of harder to watch because there's a lot more strategy going into it that you don't that a lot of people don't understand. So
yeah,
and especially like with tires nowadays that can last forever. Like in theory, you just put the hardest tire on and you can run to the end of the race. Because if you were running a strategy, you just essentially you just do like what they always do. You just put the optimum or the optimal tire on that would take the most amount of laps but still be fast enough, which is usually either like something like the soft tire now. But I don't know. It's I think Formula One has a lot to learn from things like Indy at the moment,
Definitely.
um, but it's still the pinnacle of sport. So I think
I agree.
they've still I don't think they don't need to worry. The people will always moan because you have that about any sport. The fans, the diehard
Yeah,
fans, will always moan about it. So
yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens after France. Whether there's any flashbacks out of this thing, whether we see any moments happening from or any sort of consistency of the stewards if something similar happens. Obviously, there's not many places to get pinned up against a wall in Paul Ricard. But if we see someone running offline, which is quite like will probably happen quite a lot, and they push someone off track, it'd be interesting to see if the stewards kind of penalise people for that. So I think they might feel like they have to now.
Probably so. Yeah, and like I said, the consistency needs to be there, doesn't it? But yeah, I don't know what else to add to that. I'm afraid you've covered it well there. Like you say, you said it well. Then people are always going to moan. I've moaned a hell of a lot this season about F1 and everything else, but that's what fans do, don't they? They always want more. They always want something different and or something changed. And so I just think that's the way any sport or anything goes like that. I just hope it's just for me. I just want it more competitive at the front. The midfield this year is absolutely fantastic to watch. You don't really know who's going to be better the rest most races. That's the place to watch it. I tend to, as a fan of McLaren, I tend to switch off at the front now. I don't even pay attention to the front anymore because I don't like sounding like a lot of people, but you kind of know who's going to win every race now. So you focus. I'm focusing more on the midfield because we've had some great battles there this season. It'd be nice to have those great battles up for the podium places as well because you get the racing that I think everybody's wanting. But at the minute, like we've said, Mercedes are just doing the best job out of anybody, and hats off to them. They've done it bang on so far. And for me, if they carry on the way they're going, they'll probably be wrapping the title up the earliest anybody's ever wrapped the title up because the minute nobody for me is gonna stop them.
Yeah, for sure. So, what I will say then is, I'd like to see the guys watching as well. Pole position, who's it going to be, and then who's your podium at the end of the race? What are we going to see at the end of the weekend?
Do you want my opinion now?
Yeah, go on for it.
Lewis will get pole, and I reckon it'll be probably the two Mercedes and Charles Leclerc on third.
Okay. I'm going to go out there and say Leclerc gets pole position, and I think Bottas wins the race.
Ooh.
I think uh, Valtteri comes in second, and I think Seb comes in third. But I think that there's going to be a little bit of repercussion between Seb and Lewis on, especially on lap one. I think Seb is probably going to be a little bit more hands-on than what he would do usually, and if he's alongside Lewis, I wouldn't be surprised to see those two possibly rubbing wheels.
Hmm. Interesting call. It'll be good to see who's right at the end of this non-moneyed wager, shall we say?
Yeah, yeah. So one
um,
thing, what I've got I'm just conscious of the fact that we are running almost at 90 minutes now. So
yeah.
we will wrap up shortly, guys. But well, I have got this thing that I was trialing out. And I think it'd be quite a cool idea. Is the big question. So I'm going to ask you one question, and you've got 1 minute to give me the answer, and then
Oh God.
explain why you've given that answer.
Oh God.
So, so you have 1 minute to tell me who
Right.
currently, out of Giovinazzi, Lando Norris, Alex Albon, and George Russell, is your rookie of the season so far, and why?
Right. Well, I'll try not to be biased here because obviously one of those is my driver. I would say Lando is up there at the minute. He's had some bad luck recently with DNFs and the team orders going against him in Monaco, but up there with him for me is Alex Albon. Nobody expected anything from him this season really in that Toro Rosso, and he's pretty much matched Danny Kvyat, who's a much more experienced guy at that team. Them two have worked really well together. I can't really say George Russell that much apart from the fact that he's doing what he can only do and beat his teammate, and he's beating his teammate well at the minute. Giovinazzi, he had a few goes, didn't he, beforehand, and he's doing okay, but Kim is scoring all the points. So for me, the minute, I'd say it's between Lando and Albon as rookies of the year, but just because they've been quite consistent and quite racy throughout the season so far.
Good answer. 3 seconds to spare there. That was funny actually because looking down through the comments there, Stephen said George, Meg said Lando, and SJD said Alvin. So we had three different answers, all all separate drivers. So I think it's very interesting. Those three, I think they've been very impressive. I think it's very hard to look past what Alex is doing. I think Albon, after not even being confirmed as a driver, has kind of come
Yeah,
in and he's doing really well. He's matching down. Like although Kvyat's kind of had a little bit of the rub of the green when it comes to picking up points, because we've seen Alex get involved in a couple of. I think he got run into by. I think it was even Giovinazzi that ran over his front wing at the start of the Canadian Grand Prix. He had an issue at the start of the Chinese Grand Prix. He came back through the field, obviously started in the pit lane. So, yeah, I think Albon is been really really decent so far. Um, George Russell, I think George is doing a spectacular job at Williams at the moment because that car is absolutely nowhere, and
yeah,
it is hard though because it's very hard to compare him up against Kubica because I don't know, I think has is the old injury affecting Kubica like more than what we thought it would do, or if there was someone, if we saw maybe another driver in Williams, would they be more George's pace? Because we see George lapping like regularly around a second a lap faster during the race, and then he's out qualified him so far in every session. So, and then equally Lando, I think he's had it was unfortunate what happened in Canada, but he's had a really decent season. He had a great race in Bahrain, so yeah, I think that the three
yeah.
Brits have done really well. Unfortunately, Giovinazzi will, as SJD thrown out there, Giovinazzi to be replaced at Sauber at the end of the season by Mick Schumacher, which is a big claim
I would
because
not, I
I
would not be
don't
surprised.
I don't think Mick Schumacher's all that's chatted up to me at the moment. I think
He's not doing well in F2, is he?
he's very he's got trademarks and hall I say trademarks hallmarks of his dad. He's very tenacious. He makes very bold moves, and we've seen him throw it down the inside of his team. In Bahrain, he threw it down the inside of his teammate, and he got past quite abruptly. But I don't know. I think he needs at least one more season in F2 just to
Yes,
kind
I
of.
agree.
He got promoted from F3 very quickly. He's in F2 and he's doing okay. He's not a front running team, which is probably going to hamper him at the moment. But he yeah, Steven says he's trying too hard, but I think that's because there's a media circus around him, and that's all. There was always going to be that. There's always going to be around one of the greatest drivers, like the son of the greatest driver ever, like an expectation that he's gonna take it on and go on and be like this superstar. But every driver is different. We've seen that some sons of drivers have gone on to be good, some sons of drivers have not gone on to be good. We've seen Nelson Piquet Jr. not do well compared to his dad. Bruno Senna, his uncle, like he couldn't quite cut it. But then obviously you've seen the reverse of that. You've seen Jack Villeneuve, Damon Hill, people like that, where their dads have been successful and they've gone on to win championships as well. So it's yeah, he's definitely got the talent. He just kind of needs to. I think he just needs to be nurtured a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree.
Uh,
Definitely.
so that was pretty much it for this evening. So yeah, it's that's F1 2018 put to rest. The They are the official comments of what Sav and I think about the game. So if you missed any of the stream, feel free afterwards to go back and check it out on Twitch, or it will be uploaded to YouTube. And we're working on trying to get these onto podcasting site, guys. So if you can listen to it and you're not here for it live, feel free to listen back later, hopefully on a podcasting site. Um, we should, in theory, be back next week if all goes well. We should be back most likely next Tuesday, and then I imagine when the season starts, we might be moving to Thursdays just after the races finish. So obviously Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Invictus Racing League races. So on Thursdays, hopefully, if all goes well, we will be streaming our podcast. And have you got any final thoughts when we wrap up F1 2018 now?
Um, yeah. It's been like I said at the beginning of this, I've enjoyed F1 2018, but it could have been so much better. I'm glad I've raced on it, but I wish it could have been better. And in a way, I'm leaving it feeling frustrated with it when I shouldn't have really felt like that with the game. I'm just looking forward to now F1 2019, and hopefully it'll be a much improvement from what we've read and video clips and stuff we've heard about as well. That it's going to be a much bigger improvement from this game. So hopefully that happens for us, which is not long now, like you say, till it's out. It was a good wrap up today, wasn't it, of what we spoke about at F1 2018, and I think most people are in agreement with everything we've pretty much covered tonight.
Yeah, would agree with that entirely. It's nice to put the game to rest, and looking forward to the next one coming out. And yeah, guys, we are taking, like we said with the naming of this podcast, we are taking your names into consideration. I quite like SJG says the pit radio. That'd be kind of the Invictus pit radio. It's quite a nice one. Stephen says the checkered flag. We could always, you know, well, we'll have to look at we'll have to put a list down and see which one works best. But yeah, for tonight, thanks for joining us all. Thanks for listening. If you are listening afterwards, feel free to check the streams out on YouTube or on twitch.tv, and you can follow Sab and I on Twitter, and I am GT2_driving. Al, I think you're Alan Sabatino.
Yes.
There we go. I got it right this week. There we go. And make sure you check out our racing league, guys, at Invictus RL on Twitter and Instagram, invictusracingleague.com on Facebook, and then equally Invictus Racing League for the website, Invictus Racing League on Facebook. Sorry, and yeah, check out the sign-up page if you want to get yourself on the grid for F1 2019. Equally, we're doing Project Cars 2 on a Sunday, GT Sport on a Thursday night, and FIFA will be starting up very, very shortly. So all will be going on in Invictus in the coming weeks. So make sure you check us out as soon as possible. And for tonight, thanks for joining us. And we will be back next week, where we will be hopefully ramping up the look forward to F1 2019. Hopefully, some people may have even have got a pre-release copy by then. If they get it a few days early, of course. If you've pre-ordered Legends editions, we'll see guys getting it a bit early. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if anyone has got the game by then. And yeah, we'll be chatting more Formula One, whether it be the fallout from the French Grand Prix and anything that happened that weekend, or equally, I'm sure I've got another big question that Sab can try and force an answer out inside a minute. Yeah.
Can't wait.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys, and good night.
Thank you.